Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. Daniel Rebane, and I'm James Burley here talking New Jersey Devils hockey. We're into the home stretch. It's March. Things are getting mad, if I may say. The trade deadline is just a couple days away, and who knows, maybe everything we talk about will be irrelevant come Saturday. But here we are, and the New Jersey Devils, they're not here. They're on the road. They're still in the midst of what has been a very difficult road trip that we had been anticipating for a while might be a difficult test for this team. And it seems like maybe some players may not be coming back with the team as well either. A lot of things happening in the New Jersey Devils world. But before we dive into it all and the trade deadline, all of that hoopla, let me hear it. Dan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing better than the Devils because they're limping back home to New Jersey after their last game on that road trip in Dallas. We'll get to it, but what a heartbreak finish that was. But yeah, I think I'm doing fine. Another day, another dollars, as I always say. So let's get into this Devils talk because we got a lot to talk about before the trade deadline 2 days from now.
Well, the last time we spoke was during the Four Nations break,
Hmm.
where not only did all my predictions come correct that the US would win the group stage and then lose to Canada in the gold medal game, as narrow as it was. Our guy Jack Hughes was there for Team USA. Jesper Bratt scored against the USA for Team Sweden, and then Eric Halla and the Finns got beat up a little bit. But we welcomed everybody back, and I mean, looked pretty decent in that first game back. A tough home game against the Dallas Stars that they didn't really look like they were going to win. Then they went on the road to a very vulnerable Predators team, and it looked like they got some win back in their sails. A 5-0 win, and then kind of got crushed 2 days after that by a tough Colorado Avalanche team that, hey, they were in that game until the final few minutes, and then
Yeah,
Jake Allen stormed off in disgust. Seems he was also dealing with some cramps, but I wouldn't have blamed him if he just got off
cramps.
the ice for being angered. And then they followed that up, tough game against the Utah team that, is in their debut season in their home rink in their new city. It's going to be a tough place to go and play. The Devils did well, played that really good game defensively. And then that brought us to Vegas, where some bad news happened. Not only did Jack Hughes go down in that game, but the Devils fought tooth and nail. That was a 0-0 game for most of the contest. Then a couple bad bounces go Vegas's way. They took bad penalties in the third period. Vegas walks away with a 2-0 win. And then they fight back against the Dallas Stars, and it seems like that game is within reach. They lose Dougie Hamilton to injury midway through, and then a controversial icing call at the very end, and the Dallas Stars win it on the final faceoff with just seconds to go in the third period to win 4-3. Some debate as to whether or not that was an actual icing call. I think, going through the rules, it'd be tough to have that one be waved off officially, but could have gone either way. I guess we can start there with that icing call, Dan. That was consequential, and then we can, start to zoom out a little bit more at this road trip as a whole. But just because it's fresh in our minds from last night, what did you see from that Dallas game and from that heartbreak, really?
I can't fault the Devils for their effort the past two games. Like obviously, you see Jack go down, that sucks. You see Dougie go down, that sucks. But the effort was there from the boys. It's just what we've seen since the Christmas break is for whatever reason their sticks are tight. They can't score. They're doing everything not to score goals in certain situations, and that's limiting what they've been able to do, limiting their wins over the past couple of months. And it sucks to see because, you see a guy like Timo Meyer driving play all over the ice, and then he'll have an opportunity and save miraculously. Like he's got one of the worst luck in the NHL this year. He scores against Dallas. That was good to see. Um, but yeah, I think Tom Fitzgerald is going to have to do something to bring in some firepower if they want to potentially compete in the playoffs. If they even get into the playoffs, we don't even know what, Jack's dealing with injury timeline wise. Dougie Hamilton as well kind of tweaked his knee and didn't return. So, the Devils are missing a bunch of players. Two of their top defensemen, their number one center. I mean, the wheels are coming off, man. And it could come off fast if they don't, try to fix some of these holes at the trade deadline.
And there's only so much time now.
Yeah.
Two days as of the time that we're recording this probably won't get this out until tomorrow. So if you're listening to this, watching this, it's probably only just one day until the trade deadline, and who knows, maybe this team looks totally different by the time that people get to see this. But you
Yeah.
know, that's just the game we play, the risk we run. Um, Looking back a few weeks ago, I don't think that either of us were really heavily clamoring for Tom Fitzgerald to go out and get big pieces. Maybe you know, another scoring winger in the top six, some depth down the center,
Yeah.
maybe one more bottom six guy. We really weren't saying that they needed to add anything to the blue line, but now it's kind of gotten to that point where maybe looking back, they should have anticipated some of these issues and gotten on some of the roster construction things a bit earlier. I still think there's a winning hockey team in
Yeah.
this locker room, and there absolutely should be. This team is too good to not be winning enough more games, and now some of that hard work that they've done early in the season. It's a good thing they banked a lot of points before Christmas
Yeah.
because uh, starting to creep up on them. If I can pull up the standings by themselves, it's not exactly sunshine and rainbows in the Metropolitan Division anymore. Of course, the Capitals are in a league of their own at the top, but just 4 points separate the Devils from the Blue Jackets, who are in fourth and hold the top wild card spot. That's 2 games. Guess how many games in hand the Blue Jackets have? They've
Two.
got two.
Yeah.
They're just 6 points. That's 3 games ahead of the Rangers in that second wild card spot they're fighting for. They got 2 games in hand as well. It is no longer a foregone conclusion that the New Jersey Devils are a playoff team in the year of our Lord 2025. Seems shocking, right? It seems like they went through what they went through last year to make sure it never happened again. But here we are. Frank Saravelli made some comments that he thinks the New Jersey Devils are going nowhere fast. He thinks that even if Jack Hughes miraculously is healthy for the rest of the season, it's not a saving grace for this Devils team because he showed that he couldn't be a go-to guy during the Four Nations in big moments. I think he played pretty good hockey throughout that tournament, but there is a kernel of truth in what he is saying. So I don't know. Let's start to think about this. Is it possible that with 19 games to go, the Devils squander all the good stuff they've done this season and find a way to miss the playoffs in 2025?
I'll say, I only have one critique of Tom Fitzgerald, and it's something that he's always said that he wants to do is that if he wants to make a trade, he wants to do it early. And, the past 2 years so far, he hasn't done that at all. Obviously the last trade that he's made early of any significance was bringing in Timo Meyer for that 22-23 run. And that happened in February. Um, you know, Now we're in March. Devils need, scoring. They've needed scoring the past couple months, and he hasn't pulled the trigger. Obviously, you need two to tango. This is obviously a seller's market from the trades that we've seen so far. Gustav Nyquist from Nashville going to Minnesota for a second round pick. I think that kind of indicated to all of us that, these prices are going to be high. And, sometimes you got to bite the bullet if you want to, compete in the NHL. We just saw before we hopped on, Tampa Bay just traded 2 first-round picks for Yanni Gordon, Oliver Bjorkstrand. They don't have a first-round pick until 2028. I'm not saying the Devils are in that position to be trading first-round picks like they're, candy on Halloween. But, sometimes you got to bite the bullet. And I think, they've already traded the first-round pick to get Jacob Markstrom. But I think there's other picks. The Devils have 2 first-round picks that they can trade. Obviously they have to keep one for the Jake Allen conditions, but they have 2 second-round picks. They have a load of, I wouldn't say like top end prospects, but they have above average prospects that they can trade that are in Utica that could get chances in the NHL. So that's the only thing I'm kind of shocked on. Like we were talking about this last year. He didn't make a move when the Devils needed it on D or when injuries happen. They had all this LTR spot money, and they didn't use it at all last year. Even though, maybe they shouldn't have used it last year, but you would have liked to see, a GM reward his team from the year prior to be like, I still believe in you guys. I'll go get you one piece, but he didn't. And now this year he's kind of doing the same thing. And now there's only 2 days left. We'll see if they can use that LTR space that they get from Jack Hughes if his injury is, going to keep him out long enough until the playoffs. But, those teams you brought up, Columbus and the Rangers, they're coming up on the Devils fast. But I'll say this, the Devils have 12 home games in these last 19 games. So I think they'll be able to hold on to a spot. I just don't know if they'll be able to hold on to a metropolitan spot. I think they might end up in a wild card, especially how Columbus has been playing.
And I mean, that has huge implications because you could end up having to go through the Atlantic Division to try to play in the playoffs. Like
Yeah.
if they get Florida in the first round, that ends in 4 games, right? Like I'm not
Well,
confident.
maybe. I don't know. We
Um,
beat them twice down in Florida, but
yeah,
I get your
we beat a
point.
lot
Like
of teams earlier this season. Let's be
I
real.
yeah, I know I get your point. It'd be a tough, it'd be tough, but once you
I
get to the
will say
playoffs,
this.
once you get to the
Right.
playoffs are the playoffs. So,
You're absolutely right. I will say this though, at least as of late, apart from the effort in those last few games, the New Jersey Devils have given me very little to be confident that they could make a run past the first round of the playoffs.
oh yeah, yeah.
I honestly, that's why I agreed in principle with what Frank Saravelli wanted to say. I think, honing in on Jack Hughes as the reason why they can't be, I think, is a little bit misleading. But I do agree with the statement at large that the Devils are a shell of the
But
team that they should be.
I only, but we know the problem. There's only one problem with this team, and it's goal scoring.
Yeah.
Defensively, they've been great. Goaltending, they're one of the best teams in the league. Power play and penalty kill, they have top five units in each. What's the problem? The past couple of months, they can't score. And, we've seen teams not be able to score and then turn it on like a light switch. So I think it's just all confidence at this point. I mean, if they're able to find their confidence in these last 19 games, this is one of the best teams in the NHL. Like we've seen, this core unit in past years be one of the best 5-on-5 offensive units in the league, when they were bad, when they couldn't keep pucks out of the net. So if they're able to find that game, players can find their games in, one period. It could happen
Hmm.
that fast. So um, I don't understand that criticism. That seems like a bit, picking someone while they're down kind of talk,
Literally down. Yeah.
literally down. But, I still believe in this core. I believe, if Jack Hughes comes back, if he's able to come back this season in the playoffs, I believe he'll be able to produce. He's a big time player. And him bringing up the Four Nations, he was one of the best players in the Four Nations. It's not his fault Austin Matthews couldn't bury any of his passes.
Or that Bennington had that
Well,
ridiculous glove
yeah,
save at the end of the third period.
short tournament, you can't base, someone's performance off a short tournament. I think he was one of the best players. Obviously, I'll give him some critique. He wasn't really good in that final game against Canada after the first period. But other than that, I like Jack's tournament. I like what he was doing in those games. He was bringing speed. He was playmaking defensively. He was pretty good too. So I don't know. I think Frank was going off on a tangent. That's his opinion. So we'll give him his opinion. We have our own opinions, but I think the Devils could be able to find their mojo if they're able to bring in. We'll get to this in a bit later in the pod, but if they're able to bring in another top six guy to kind of help them score goals, and he brings the fire back into this team that they're missing goal scoring wise, I think everybody can find their game again. Like Timo's already scored this month. March is Timo's month, so I'm expecting him to score 15 goals like he did
Mhm.
last year. Obviously, that's a bit hyperbolic, but I think he'll be able to find his game. Jesper Bratt needs to just shoot the puck more. I think he's had a good season so far, passing and playmaking. I think he can shoot the puck more. I think he's looking to pass too much, but it's working so far. And Nico Hischier. So um I believe in this core, and I believe they'll be able to dig themselves out of this hole, even though it's been a couple months.
Well, we're still waiting on the actual specifics of this Jack Hughes injury. The Dougie Hamilton one, I'm not sure if we have the specifics there, but
It's his knee. It's
I
definitely his
think
knee.
it's got
It,
to be his knee.
yeah.
It seems like maybe, hopefully, knock on wood, it's not as serious as what Jack Hughes's injury might look like. But the fact of the matter is, three key injuries, including Hughes, Hamilton, and of course Jonas Siegenthaler has obviously hurt the Devils. It would hurt any team, but a team that has as much high end talent as New Jersey, you'd hope that they could fight through this adversity maybe a bit better. But the goals just weren't there, even when these guys were healthy. It's something that goes deeper than just the personnel. Um, and then I think back to that Dallas game. Timo Meyer gets brought up to the first power play unit, and it takes him 6 seconds to score a goal.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Sheldon Keefe is maybe, a piece or two away from figuring out where these guys fit best without some of his bigger pieces. I think that there's something to figure out. And without Dougie Hamilton, I think that means Seamus Casey is now going to be uh, relied upon a bit more down the stretch of the season, at least at the NHL level. Um, who knows? Who knows what we're going to see? I'm confident that they have what it takes to bounce back, but this is the test now, right? We talked about this road trip for a long time as something we'd circle on the calendar and say we're going to find out a lot about what this New Jersey Devils team is made of based on what they can get out of this road trip. And I think while they played some good hockey, even in the games that they lost, not including that Colorado game, I think we left with more questions than answers, which
And
is a little bit disheartening at this point of the season.
but I'll say this. I have just a couple more points before we want to move on. I'll say this for the young defenseman. It's your road now. Luke
Mm-hmm.
Hughes, it's your time, bud. Simon Nemec. Hey, you're getting the time. This is what you wanted. Seamus Casey, you've only been here this year, but the path is there. Go on and take it. Go show the rest of the league that you're NHL players and you can, kind of secure the Devils a playoff spot. 19 games. It's all on you. You guys, it's on you. You have the games, you have the points that banked up, as you said, James. Go perform now. And then lastly, I'll say, obviously a lot of criticism thrown Tom Fitzgerald's way for a bunch of things, go make a trade. I can see some criticism, but at the end of the day, when we're talking about this bottom six, I think it's just on the players. The players are just not performing. And if when we were talking before the season, I thought we'd have said, there's some players in this bottom six, but a guy like Eric Holla hasn't recorded a point in like over almost 30 games. I mean, you wouldn't have thought that. I think he averages over like half a point a game in his career, and he's just not performing this season for whatever reason. Obviously, he picked up an injury, maybe that's affecting him. But like Curtis Lazar is not doing anything. Like all these players that you would thought you have gotten something from them, they're just not performing. I don't like. What do you see from those guys in the bottom six?
I was gonna redirect the conversation there. I think you have to attribute some of the poor form of Eric Holla to that injury. Perhaps he played a lot of the last few seasons on a line with Jack Hughes as well. So I
Hmm.
think that is something you consider maybe as something he had points inflation a couple years ago if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, I think I've been largely disappointed with what the bottom six has been able to conjure, with the exception of guys like Paul Cotter,
Yeah.
the way he started the season, and Curtis Lazar feels like the perfect fit, right? And when they brought him in, he added the size and physicality um, to this Devils team that they simply didn't have. When they traded for him, he instantly became the team hits leader. So there was a clear intention in bringing guys like Lazar. There was an intention in bringing guys like Stefan Nason, even in Paul Cotter, and I wouldn't even rope in Nason with the bottom six
No,
anymore.
yeah, he's been great.
He's played his way into the first line for a lot of the season, so
Mhm.
I can't even include him. It just like, and I love Nathan Bastian. Like he's a guy who loves being a New Jersey Devil, but outside of what he can do defensively and maybe digging in the corners on a forecheck here and there, it's starting to feel like that this Devils team has a bit of dead weight in that bottom six. And I hate to say that. Justin Dowling has come up and has done a good job two ways on the ice, like for what you would expect from him. But I don't know if that guy should be an NHLer day in and day out like he's been. I mean, people have been following us around on Twitter. You mentioned Adam Beckman, who has been scoring points. Nolan Foot's a guy who
Holy foot, yeah,
has,
Brian
has kind of just
Hallinan.
Hallen and these are guys who have kind of just been iced out because the roster spots just aren't there in the bottom six for this Devils team. But I mean, down in Utica, they've more than earned a shot to be in Justin Dowling's shoes. So I I don't mean to pick on him specifically, but because he was the guy who made the jump from Utica as one of the
Mhm.
forwards this year, it's just that's just where my mind is at. I do think that yes, Dawson Mercer is not a 27 goal scorer anymore like he was as a rookie, but I think it's time to acknowledge like his role is really a third line guy. He's going to be a guy that you can maybe put in top 6 minutes when there's an injury here and there, but he's a 40 to 50 point scorer somewhere around there. He's a secondary contributor. You can't be looking at him and saying he needs to score more points in order to fuel this team. Timo Meyer has gotten a lot of criticism. I still believe that part of that is, he hasn't been given the same opportunities that guys like Nico, Jesper, Jack Hughes have been given,
Yeah.
even to a degree, Stefan Nason. I think Stefan Nason's fully earned his power play 1 minutes, but, I think Meyer's a guy that you want to get more out of, maybe isn't playing up to his contract, but this is a guy who was a 40 goal scorer 2 years ago. He's fully capable of being a go-to guy at the NHL level. He has been before. I just think they need to challenge him a bit more with more minutes, with more high opportunities. I mean, he's going to be playing first line day in and day out without Jack Hughes now. I think it's time to say, you know, it's time to score some goals, Timo. I don't know. I think about the bottom six, and I think that there was, Curtis Lazar. I hope that's because of the injury he faced for most of the season because he's just looked like a shell of himself. Same with Eric Halla. Yeah, it's been a little bit frustrating. I gotta say I haven't really been enjoying watching the Devils lately, and I feel like they haven't been enjoying playing with each other. That's just the sense that I get, and you're not going to be successful when you're not enjoying playing, and that hurts. I think um, for those who want to criticize Tom Fitzgerald, I think there's certainly areas to criticize. I think he did a great job putting together a team that could be successful, but maybe as the season has gone on, hasn't really answered the bell in terms of addressing the issues. But you can't say they haven't been at least a little bit active ahead of the trade deadline because they did help to facilitate a trade between Boston and Edmonton. And I don't know what the deal is, but the Devils are retaining 25% of a contract here and they get the rights to Shane LaChance as well. So I mean, what was your overall impression of that deal that sent Trent Frederick all the way to Edmonton?
Well, when I woke up and I saw that, or I was already up, and I kind of just saw, that notification pop up, I was like, oh, interesting. And then Elliot Freeman says, yeah, third team involved, New Jersey. I was like, whoa, whoa, what are we doing here? And obviously, most people saw Edmonton and they're like, oh, are they gonna get Adam Henrique back in the trade? Like it's a three-way trade, like straight up. And obviously, I knew that wasn't gonna happen. Obviously, we were gonna
He's fantastic.
retain money and probably get a pick back. But they obviously get Shane LaChance back from Edmonton. They send Peter Hauser to Boston to get Frederick and take that 25%. Basically, what I've seen most people say about them retaining the money is that with Jack and Siegenthaler getting injured, the closer you are to the cap ceiling, the more of the LTIR money you can use. So if he is going to be on LTIR, you would want to be closer to the ceiling so you can use all the money that he would be giving you. So 575K on the books now gets him closer to the cap ceiling, and then they get Shane LaChance, and you know most people obviously probably wouldn't know who he is. You might know him if you were watching Mikhail Yurgurov play for BU. So obviously I haven't been focusing on him, but he stands out. He's a sophomore captain. Like you don't see many of those in college hockey.
Certainly not on the biggest teams.
Yeah, and he's a legacy as well. I believe his dad played for BU and played in the NHL a while. So also his dad's a pro scout for the Devils. So there's another connection there. But when you're able to add a guy that's 6'5", 220, has middle six potential in my opinion, probably a third liner. Um, you basically just buy him with the retaining the cap. why not do it? I mean, obviously they know him from his dad. They know him from watching Yurgurov at BU. Jay Pandolfo probably gave some information about him as well. And I think he's 1 year away from turning pro. If he wants, he could probably turn pro after this year, and play in the AHL next year with his size. Like he's ready to go, like physically. Like you can see it. He stands out, standing 6'5" on the ice. He actually had a really good goal in the bean pie where he put it between his legs, on the power play in front of the net. Was on Sports Center top 10 plays. So maybe he turns into something like really good. I can see him being a third line bottom six guy. And the Devils don't have many of those guys coming soonish to the NHL. Obviously, we see a guy like Lenny Hamanaho, Arseny Gritsyuk, but those guys are more, I would say, offensively gifted guys. Obviously Lenny could possibly be a two-way guy in the NHL, but you look at a guy like Shane LaChance. He's been a captain at every level. High school, USHL. He was a captain there. He's a captain at BU. He brings leadership. He brings that physicality. I mean, he is a player that the Devils have been looking to acquire, especially in the draft last year. We saw all those big guys that they drafted last year, and he's just another big guy that they bring into the organization. And I'm interested to see what he could be at the NHL level, because I've seen already what he's doing at BU, as a sophomore. I'm interested to see him.
Yeah, I think it's a wait and see game on whether or not he progresses to the NHL level and what role he might take in the New Jersey organization, whether that be in Utica or in New Jersey. But I mean, a guy with a lot of promise, a guy who can be valuable on both ends of the ice, brings size, brings leadership, obviously. So I mean, and clearly there's some valuation there if they were willing to facilitate this trade and hold some uh, retainment of the salary there. So, I mean, I think this is one that we're going to have to keep an eye on for the future. But
Hey, BU is going to get
obviously,
a lot of viewers now. That's all I'm going to say.
yeah,
So,
especially from our little corner of the hockey world. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here.
mm,
This isn't the type of move that would move the needle for Devils fans or for the team at large, at least not in this current moment. So let's peel things back and start to take a look around the league. Our old friend Vitek Vanacek just got shipped out
yep.
uh, and is now being traded again, and he's going to be in Florida now. So chance maybe at Stanley Cup glory for our friend the Vitek. Um,
Yeah, good for him.
that's exciting. I think the areas of need for the Devils have. I mean, we've talked about them, but so have others.
Yeah.
They need depth at the center position, especially
Mm,
now with Jack Hughes gone. Could
yep.
use another touch of scoring in the top six, especially with Jack Hughes out. And they could use some help in the bottom six, whether that be through physicality, whether that be through a depth center, like I just mentioned, or one way or the other, something that can help them stop having some dead weight around because it feels that they are dragging around a bit of it. So let's give out some names. Let's talk about some guys maybe who the Devils could look after and try to help bolster this squad ahead of a playoff push because now it's no longer about can they play good hockey into the playoffs. It's now can
Yeah.
they make the playoffs.
Yeah.
It has become a question whether or not this team belongs in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2025. Can't believe I'm saying that, but that's something that they're going to have to achieve. It's going to be considered an achievement now to make the playoffs whereas back in December and even in January when they were playing poorly, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that they'd be there. Now, not so much. So let's hear some names. Daniel, you go first. Who is someone the Devils should be going after?
Yeah, let's start off at center. We'll give our names, and I'm gonna go with Ryan Donato. I think,
It's a,
should the Chicago center playing wing right now for Chicago, playing with Bedard and what they've been doing in Chicago. I mean, let's just talk about a bad situation. At least we're not Chicago. I'll say that because man, you feel bad for Connor Bedard each night when they're, not performing because even when they are performing, they're trading out players that are, critical to their, future. And a player like Ryan Donato, if I was Chicago, I would have already re-signed him because No, he's got some chemistry with that top six, but I think Ryan Donato is a good fit for that third center role that the Devils would be looking for when Jack Hughes is back. Obviously, he could play up the lineup right now. You know, I just see what he brings on a nightly basis. You know, he brings that scoring touch that the Devils are lacking down in the bottom six. Just like you have Justin Dowling as your third line center. No offense to him, but he's a 34-year-old journeyman. Like this was his first real taste of the NHL this season, and he hasn't looked necessarily out of place, but he's just a net neutral. He's not producing offense. He's doing whatever he can defensively. I just think if you're able to bring a guy like Donato in, that's just a huge upgrade, especially heading into the playoffs. Me personally, if you're able to add a guy that's on pace for 30 goals this year, like, obviously Donato was once touted as a real prospect, but just hasn't put it together. This year he's putting it together. And obviously he's a UFA. Fitzy doesn't like to really add rentals, but I think this is a moment in time where you might have to, put that to the side and say, you know what, we might have to have a rental here too. And I think, if you're able to add that guy as your third C, playing with a Dawson Mercer on your right wing, I think because that's what Dawson needs. He needs a guy to kind of drive play. So if you're able to add, some more talent to that bottom six, I think that would be a real benefit. And he's got all the confidence in the world this year. So bringing in a guy like him, I think, would be perfect for the Devils.
Yeah, I mean that's a name that's been talked about in Devil circles now for a couple of weeks leading into this trade deadline. I think it's one that makes a lot of sense. Again, that does make it tricky in terms of will Tom Fitzgerald, kind of go against what he's normally done and get someone that may only be here for 2 months. Um, Comes in at a low AAV cost, I believe, only 2 million as well. So
Yep.
it wouldn't be expensive as a rental by any means, but could become expensive should they try to exercise re-signing him at the end of the season. Because I imagine he would want an increase in pay that could make things a little bit more difficult in his
Well,
regard.
I'll say we just saw another option go off the board with Jake Evans
Yep.
re-signing in Montreal, and I thought off of his good year that he was having this year, I thought he would get a bigger deal. I mean, like AAV wise, but he's under that 3 million spot, and when I've been kind of projecting rosters for next year, if you're able to get a third line center for like three around the 3 million spot.
Do it.
I think you do that for 2 or 3 years. So
Uh-huh.
if you bring in a guy like Donato on an expiring deal and he performs, I mean, you know, if you can get him for 3.25, maybe even 3.5 for 2 years, I think you do that, especially with the cap going up.
I think it gets pretty hard um, to start looking at, and I'll keep it at center just because that's where we started. It
Yeah,
gets pretty hard to, find a center that's like that, other than Donato, that's available right now, who
yeah,
fits snugly
hmm
in the third line role at that price point. Because there's a lot of guys who feel like second liners to me in
yeah,
terms of how are evaluated. And I'm gonna rattle off a few here because I don't know if we have to dive in
yeah,
head
yeah.
first, but a guy like Ryan Strome, I think, fits in that category. Brock Nelson would fit in that category as well. I mean, he was just very emotional and playing in what might have been his final game as a New York Islander. I would put Casey Middlestat in that realm as well. I think he's a guy, obviously a bit younger, who doesn't feel like a rental, whereas guys like Brock Nelson or Ryan Strome or even Ryan O'Reilly might feel like. I think Middlestat's a guy that if they want to push for that center depth for the future, that's the area you go in. And with Jack Hughes out, he can be that second liner behind Nico for the remainder of the season. But then it starts to get difficult when you think about re-signing. Are you going to pay a young, solid centerman in Casey Middlestad a good amount of money to be a third line center? I'm not sure. I think he could play that role perfectly fine, but I'm not I'm not entirely bought in on that. Another name that the Devils were linked with not too long ago was Braden Shen. I'm not sure what the ultimate outcome of those conversations were, or or whether or not that fits the scoring need that they need to add. But I don't know. I think Middlestad makes a lot of sense if you want to make that decision long term.
Mhm.
But you then might have to overpay a guy who is going to be underperforming in a role that he's capable for. So, what do you think about some of those names I just threw out?
Yeah, like you bring up like a Brock Nelson or a Braden Shen. Like my only problem with those guys is they'd be too expensive in a trade. Like, I I think I saw something about Braden Shen, like St. Louis wanting 2 first-round picks for Braden Shen. It's like I don't think the Devils are in the spot to be doing something that Tampa Bay just did. Like Tampa
Mm-hmm.
Bay is going all in because their core is aging out. Their core players are in their early 30s, mid 30s, so they're doing what they can to milk as much Stanley Cup potential out of them as possible. And I think those players would fit perfectly with the Devils. It's just that I don't think the Devils are ready to take that next step, if you know what I'm saying, to be a
I
cup contender this year, especially this year. Like,
I'm right
if,
there with you.
so, maybe like if we had our first this year, I'd be like, okay, maybe you trade your first-round pick, but we've already traded that. So I don't know if I'm willing to give up, my 2026 first-round pick for a 33-year-old that, has kind of been underperforming in like a Braden Shen. Obviously, he brings Stanley Cup experience, he brings that physicality, and he would fit that third line spot well, especially behind like Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. He brings that leadership. He brings that stability to the spine of the team. It's just that I don't think, Fitzgerald's in a spot to, you know, throw assets away, basically. I don't know if throwing away is the right word, but, spending those assets right now. So, um, I like Middlestat. I could see, maybe like, couple of mid-round picks, like a second and a fourth or a second and a third, and I'd be fine with that. Obviously, I don't know what his specific contract is. I don't know if he has another year on it, but I could see like his age range kind of fits with this team's core, so I
Yeah.
could, I could see that. And then I would say like the another guy I would bring up down in Nashville is Ryan O'Reilly. I feel like Ryan
Hmm.
O'Reilly probably fits better than like a Braden Shen. Obviously, that's also an expensive trade, but I think what I've seen from Ryan O'Reilly this year is, he's still playing good. It's just the team around him kind of stinks, and that's
Oh,
kind
they're
of
awful.
that's kind of unexpected with all the players they brought in this summer. Like they went from winners in free agency to a top three pick. Um, but when you look at his numbers specifically and his Corsi, it's, high end. He's still performing individually. It's just for whatever reason, players around him aren't performing. Um, but yeah, if there was like an older guy I would go after with term, because he's only making 4.5. So, if you're able to bring in like a guy like him, I would say maybe you give up like a higher end asset, like a prospect for him. But anybody else, like in that mid 30s range, I probably would kind of steer away from.
I couldn't agree more on that, both from the price point perspective and from the age perspective. It just doesn't really make sense, even if these guys stylistically fit into what the Devils are
Yeah.
looking for. I mean, to play devil's advocate, I mean, no pun intended there, but um, Ryan O'Reilly, if he's on the ice when the Devils ice that puck against Dallas, he's winning that face off, and
Yeah,
that
and
game goes to overtime, right?
exactly. So,
So, and I like the prospect of what these guys would offer, but I do think it's a little too rich for the Devils' blood right now, even with the LTIR money that they can be playing with.
yeah.
Um, yeah, let's see. So that we've talked about centers. I
Yeah.
think I think Donato is probably at the top of both of our lists there. Let's talk about getting another scorer in the top six, someone else to help move the needle. Who do you have for that role?
Yeah, I kind of, there's a couple guys out there like if there's like a high-end guy out there that I would go after. I won't go too deep into him, but it'd be Alex Tuck out in Buffalo just because he brings that like physical presence. He's been proven as a scorer in his career. It'd be interesting to see Buffalo trade a guy like that. Me personally, I wouldn't. He's a guy you build around, but we've seen Buffalo trade players before. Like we all know, Ryan O'Reilly's one of them. Like they trade Ryan O'Reilly, he's a Stanley Cup champion. They trade Jack Eichel, he's a Stanley Cup champion. Like Sam Reinhart, Stanley Cup champion. Like all those
Mhm.
guys, I don't know what Buffalo's doing, but kind of one guy I actually want to focus on is Rickard Rakell in
Yep,
Pittsburgh.
took
And
mine.
oh, I took yours.
That's good. That's good.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit and then you can add on. But I mean, if you asked me this question last year, Rickard Rakell would be nowhere near this conversation, is because he was really bad for whatever reason. But this year, playing with Crosby and whatever it is, it's clicking for him. And it's not like he's like a pure sniper from like mid range or outside. I was watching his goal compilation. A lot of his work happens in front of the crease, and when I'm watching Devil games, I'll see like, Jack Hughes or Jesper Bratt take a shot and then there'd be a rebound in the crease and nobody's there. And I'm
Mhm.
like, man, if the Devils only had someone just to be like cleaning up garbage, like a Stefan Nason, but like a higher end version of him. And Raquel's done that this year for Pittsburgh. Like he's just always in the blue paint, always finishing, plays. Like he stood out a lot to me. And the only thing I'll say is like, is this a 1 year thing? Maybe it is. But Pittsburgh's selling. They're looking to sell. They want to cash in on some of these or retool on some of these assets they have to maybe get another chance at making a cup run with Sidney Crosby. I don't think that's realistic for them, but whatever. We could take advantage of that. I kind of brought up if you're able to maybe get, Kyle Dubas to eat 500K or a million, I'd give them two first round picks. I mean, not two first round picks, two second round picks. I'd give them the two second round picks from this year. I'd be like, here you go. And maybe like a lower end prospect to kind of sweeten the pot. But I think if he's the type of guy you put next to Jack Hughes, and he was already on pace for his career high in goals. But you put him with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt in the playoffs, man, that'd be. I think that would be the perfect setup for the Devils, getting a winger next to Jack Hughes. And the funny thing is, he could throw his body around. I think he's right about where Timo Meyer is hits wise this year, which is right outside the top 100. And so he brings a complete game to him.
Yeah, the reason I like Raquel is, exactly what you finished on. He brings a complete game. I think he wears a lot of different hats. He's the type of guy that, should the roster around him require him to be a third line guy and dig into corners, he can do that.
Yeah.
Should he have to fill in on the first line and be that late arrival guy, net front presence to clean up goals in front of the net, he can do that too. He can also play at a really, really high pace. I can see him being a guy that pairs beautifully on a line with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, not only because he's going to be the guy in front of the net, but he can skate with those two guys and he can play make with those two guys. It doesn't seem like it'd be too difficult a learning curve. And I think the best evidence for that, if I can take a page out of Frank Saravelli's playbook and read too much into what happens at the Four Nations tournament, is he was not really meant to be in that Sweden team.
No.
He was a late addition and then ended up being one of their more impactful players
Mhm.
because of just the adaptability this guy has. I think it would be a bad loss for Pittsburgh if they do, in fact, want to do what Tampa's doing and milk every last ounce of hockey that Sidney Crosby has in him. Raquel's a guy that you want to keep around him. I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
But time's ticking over there. They're not going to be in the playoffs this year. The Devils might. I think that's one that you definitely. I would be encouraging Tom Fitzgerald to make a
And
move
he's
in.
got term as well. So
Yeah, and this isn't one that automatically, is done and dusted by the end of April, end of May. I think that that one, I feel more confident about saying Raquel is the answer in the top six than I did about any of the other names I said for center.
yeah.
Um, Even Ryan Donato. I
Yeah.
think Raquel is a more attractive option. Obviously, it's going to cost a little bit more money, but seems like the Devils might have a little bit of that to play around with at this moment. So, I mean, is there any other names that you think if Raquel for some reason sticks around in Pittsburgh or goes elsewhere that the Devils can look at?
Yeah, I think in the top six, I think everybody's name, goes over to someone out in Long Island, and that's Kyle Palmieri,
Yep.
former New Jersey Devil. And I think if like let's say Raquel stays or is traded to a different team, and the Devils are looking for that scoring punch, I think they can go back to over reliable and bring Kyle Palmieri back. I think he just fits, the culture of the team. He's been here, he's done it before, and he's still doing it in Long Island, even though the Islanders, they're the Islanders. So, but I mean, he's still got game to him. Obviously, he's a UFA, I believe. If they still wanted to bring him back, they could. Like they have that relationship. And they have the relationship with Lou in the front office. So I think a deal could be had there if they really wanted to get a guy like Palmieri, a deal could be made there. Um, I think he's just a fit. I think those are the two guys I think are the most realistic wingers. If they wanted a top six goal scoring winger, those would be the two realistic guys. And obviously, people might say, contradicting yourself with the age, but I think it's just different when you're looking at wingers. Like
Yeah.
they need proven guys in the winger position. At center, they kind of just need more of a scoring offensive touch, kind of bring that spark to the bottom six. And, that's why I said Donato. And so back to winger, who's scoring around here right now, other than Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and, Jesper Bratt here and there? Nobody. So you bring in a guy that's proven like a Kyle Palmieri. I think everybody would be fine with Palmieri coming back to New Jersey.
And remind me, does anybody have the number 21 jersey at this moment? Because I don't think there is.
I don't
I,
think so.
I think he'd slide right back in, and not
Yeah.
only would he slide right back in onto his side of the ice, but if you've got a Palmieri jersey somewhere in your closet, folks, you might be able to bring that
Yeah.
one back to the Rock and not buy a new one. And I would love to have him back, not only because he was a great Devil when he was here, but he's a Jersey guy as well.
Yeah.
He has that bottom six work ethic, but that top six quality, and that's a rarity in the NHL these days. And I really love Kyle Palmieri. He's always one of my favorite Devils, not only because he was a Jersey guy, but just because of the way he played the game. I think another name that's been floated around a little bit, and for good reason, is Jordan Kyrou. I think that one gets a little bit expensive, and I don't know if it's exactly the type of fit the Devils want in terms of getting scoring. You want to get a proven scorer. I think Kyrou
Especially at his cap.
at his cap comes in as more of a playmaker, and I think the Devils are chock full of those right now. Um,
I could see McCann out of Seattle if they're still looking to
Jared McCann.
trade more players. He'd be like the most expensive player they would go after, but I
Hmm.
think he fits. The age range is 28. He's in his prime. His cap hit's not that much, and he's got terms. So I think he'd probably like be like the most expensive guy to go get. But like I said with Raquel, I think he's a proven guy. He's shown what he can do out in Seattle. And if you add him to the top six, I think he brings the quality missing from this team at this point.
And then, of course, one of the other really big names in that category would be Brock Besser. Again,
Hmm.
comes at a pretty high price point. Would require the Devils to send something at least somewhat attractive back to Vancouver. Um, and again, it doesn't have to be about this year for the Devils. I don't think that even going into this year, we thought they would be a contender, maybe a conference final type of
Yeah.
season.
Getting
But
to the conference finals would have been a success, like party.
absolutely.
So
And I think that I don't think Brock Besser ends this week in Vancouver, but I also don't think that he ends this week in New Jersey. I think if they made a move like that, they would have to give up something rather significant. And for me at this point, I'm more convinced than ever that it doesn't have to be about this year.
yeah.
So I don't love, you know, making that big jump. Um,
And I'll bring up one name
let's
because
do it.
obviously he was brought up by a bunch of guys. I believe Pierre LeBrun brought him up. Obviously, Miko Rantanen down in
Yep.
Carolina. Obviously, that's a tough situation because, like I said, I mean, I kind of I told everybody he's not gonna stay in Carolina after this year because Carolina's not gonna give him 14 million. Even right now, I believe their offer is like over 100 mil over 8 years or whatever it is, or it might be like 100 for 8 years. He knows what he wants. He wants 14 or whatever it is. Whatever his number is not being hit. And maybe he just doesn't like Carolina. Like I said, like might happen. Like no offense, but like a lot of players kind of, you know, it Carolina is Carolina for most people. Like it doesn't fit them or whatever it is. They don't jive with that area. Whatever it is, that's people's opinions. I just thought he would always get to UFA. Now, Pierre LeBrun said that the Devils have poked around and said, "Hey, if you're looking to flip him, we'd be interested." I just don't think Carolina would be sending Miko Rantanen to New Jersey. And I don't think the Devils should be trading for a guy like Miko Rantanen unless, I'll say this, unless there's an extension in place, maybe you think about it. But I just wouldn't do it because if he's going to be a UFA and you really want him, go get him as a free agent. If he wants 14 million, go give him 14 million. If you're able to, fit that money, like I said last night in a tweet, I said if you're able to find a way to fit Miko Rantanen in with a Luke Hughes extension and make everything work, go
Why
do
not?
it. Yeah, go do it. I just don't think a trade's gonna fits what the Devils
It
want to
it
do.
doesn't make that reality any more likely. I agree with
Yeah,
you, and
exactly.
I for the same reasons why I think Brock Besser might not be the best move at this moment. Granted, it would of course be more expensive even, and yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
super confident that Carolina is gonna just
I just think they hold on to him and he walks as a free agent.
that makes the most sense. I think the writing's on the wall for that. I think that would be one of the more dramatic lead-ins to the trade deadline if he was traded again. So as exciting as that might make it, we always love a little bit of drama here on Buck on the Parkway, but I'm not sure if that feels realistic. Um, we've
But
addressed the center depth. We've addressed
yeah,
the top six scoring. We got to talk a little bit about the bottom six.
yeah.
Give me a name, someone, anyone you might think, because I'm losing ideas here.
Yeah. So before I give any names, I kind of wanted to bring up the question that fits. Like, even if you might not want to add someone in the bottom six, is there a point where you look at a Nate Bastion or a Curtis Lazar and say, it's just not working out and we need some fresh blood? Do you look at just trading one or two of those guys just off the team, get a late round draft pick, whatever you can, and then you call up a Nolan Foote and a Brian Hallinan as like, those are your additions to the bottom six. Like I could see that. I feel like that could be a big option, or at least for me. If I was in if I was in those shoes, we've seen it from Lou all the time. Like make I wouldn't say rash decisions, but he's made bold decisions to trade kind of like locker room guys out the door when it's not working. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We've seen that happen in 02, 03 before the season. They traded Jason Arnott. They traded, Peter Sikora. Those are bigger name guys, but those
Right.
were those were guys that were loved in the locker room. And, you know, I could see that maybe being something that happens in the Nate Bastion where he's traded maybe in a swap for someone for a bottom six role. But I'll bring up the name that I would be really looking into, and that's Brandon Tanev out in Seattle. I
Yep.
think he brings that speed, he brings that physical nature. He's one of the guys in the locker room. He's a big glue guy. I think you know adding him to the penalty kill as well. And I mean, just having his his face on the Devils roster, like you just scroll down, you see
Just
Brandon
because he's got
Tanev.
those funny photos
Yeah,
still.
like I think you just make the trade just for that because that'd be hilarious to see. Um, and you can make some social content out of it where he sees the devil and he gets scared. It would be hilarious. But I think he brings what the Devils are looking for in their bottom six. Like they have Paul Cotter already, but imagine like a Brandon Tanev on the other side of him on the fourth
Hmm.
line. Like that's a scary fourth line. And then if you want to put like Eric Hall in the middle, I feel like that'd be a really good fourth line heading into playoffs. Like that could just grind you away. And Brandon Tanev's not the biggest goal scorer or point producer, but I think once it comes to the nitty gritty, I think that type of a line could produce what you are looking for in the playoffs, and that's speed, physicality, finishing your checks, forward checking, penalty kill. I think all those guys could do that, and I think that's what they're missing on that bottom six is speed. For whatever reason, Paul Cotter's got it, but that's one guy. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. Um, I just think if you're able to bring in a Brandon Tanev to this team, he brings that spark that the Devils are missing in that bottom six.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking a lot about, maybe finding some more speed and offense. I think a guy who fits into that, he would be expensive, kind of feels like a top six guy at sometimes is that Scott Lawton. I think would be a little bit too rich
Oh,
for
at center.
this role. He's also a natural center.
Yeah, they
So
want a first round pick from him.
yeah, that. I don't see him being a top six guy
No.
in his future, but I think that's the way Philadelphia might evaluate him. Here's another name. He would be a lot cheaper, and this is really would be a defensively sound pick. There's another center, but a guy who can play, obviously as a right winger, and that's Luke Kunin. I
Hmm.
mean, he would be a cheaper option. Not he's a physical guy, not necessarily a very big guy, but certainly plays physically. Only I think 10 or so goals on the year right now, but is good on both sides of the ice. Um, I think that he would be a good penalty killer. I think he's some guy who brings that speed to the bottom six that they need. Um, I don't know. I think that's one that you could do with San Jose that would be rather cheap as well. So I think Tanev is light years ahead of both of those guys I just named in terms of what the Devils need, what the fit could be.
Hmm.
But I think if Tanev is an attractive option that is going to probably get a lot of phone calls from a lot of teams around the league, I think Luke Kunin might be a little bit more of an under the radar pick here.
Yeah, I like that name, Luke, San Jose guy. Kunin. Say it again. Kunin.
Kunin or Kunin, I don't know
Is he
how.
the he's German?
I believe he's German.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So I
Yeah.
he is who I'm thinking about. Yeah. I think, if you're not able to get a guy like Tanev
Oh,
because the
wait, is
price,
he? He might be American actually.
oh,
You might
uh
just. He
now
might.
I feel
Maybe
bad.
mistaken.
But
I'm starting to think he's. I'm starting to
I
think he's
know.
American because I remember he did play in college.
Okay, I still know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
But again, if you're not able to get like a Brandon Tanev because the price might be a bit too high for his type of role, I think he fits, what they would be looking for a cheap, kind of swap in the parts, fresh blood. But again, like I kind of bring up, you've got bottom six guys that are ready to fill that role, that are,
Right.
they have that hunger to be in the
They
NHL.
don't need to make a trade for this role.
That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like it fits, considering that because I don't know if he is because I feel like that would have been a move that I made like a month and a half ago before the Four Nations. Is like, it's not working out with like a Nate Bastion. Okay, maybe why don't you put him on waivers? Call someone up and see if that works. Because like you don't necessarily need to trade a Curtis Lazar or a Nate Bastion. If they get picked up on waivers, what were you going to get in a trade from him anyway? Like a 6 round pick, you know. So I'm just surprised I haven't seen like those type of moves yet. We haven't seen someone like that go on waivers yet and be like, wow, okay, they're serious about like they're not performing. So I don't know. I feel like a Nolan Foote deserves to be up here. We've seen Brian Hallinan look decent in his games that he's been up here. So I'm just shocked that we haven't seen those type of moves yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a pretty good place to stop in terms of a comprehensive look at what the Devils trade deadline might look at. I think we've maybe thrown around as many names as Tom Fitzgerald and front office has just in that few minutes. The Devils road trip is over. They're traveling back to New Jersey, probably probably back now as we speak, but we're going to wait and see on Dougie Hamilton. We're going to wait and
Yep.
see on Jack Hughes, and it doesn't necessarily get much easier though. They got to welcome the Jets to the Rock. That's on Friday night. Then they got to go to Philly over the weekend. Then they have to host Columbus. It's a tough game before they host
That's a big
Edmonton.
game. That's a big game.
That is a couple of big games right there. Then they've got to go to Pittsburgh. Then they've got to go to Columbus before a nice little homestand against a
Those
few
Columbus
Canadian
games,
teams.
those Columbus games are going to
Those are
be,
those are two 4 point games right there.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we said we wanted to learn a lot about the Devils after this road trip, and like I said, we left with more questions than answers. So this next week or two could be the defining moment of the Devils season. And 2 days away from the trade deadline, we will see what happens there. But for now, that is all we've got for Puck on the Parkway. For Daniel Rebane, I've been James Burley. This has been a very comprehensive look into what the trade deadline might look like for the New Jersey Devils and a good check in here in early March of 2025. The Devils, by the skin of their teeth, still in third place in the Metropolitan Division, still in a playoff position for now. We will see you guys next time on the show. Thanks for watching.
Peace.
Well, we're back. A
Oh.
little faster than we thought. I had just taken our footage and our audio into the proverbial studio. And as that happened, the news came out. It is official. Jack Hughes is done for the season, is undergoing surgery on that shoulder. Yeah, kind of felt like the writing was on the walls there that he would be out long term. Perhaps we thought maybe he'd be available for the playoffs, but evidently not. It's going to be about getting ready for 2025, 2026 for Jack Hughes. So, yeah, what does that mean for the Devils season, Dan?
Oh my God. Just, just talk about what year could be worse like than 2025 to start the, oh my, we're 3 months in and this is like one of the worst years for Devils fans, the roster, Tom Fitzgerald. God damn. And we don't even know what's up with Dougie Hamilton yet. Like he could easily be out for the year as well. So, what the Devils do now? I think they stay the course. I don't think this changes anything. I don't think they go out there and make a splash edition, anything other than we kind of already talked about. But man, I think that's a blow. Not to have your, best player, best offensive player was pushing 100 points this year, you know, made another step in his game. Like he's one of the better defensive players on the team as well. Um, you know, he wore an A, but he led on the ice like by example. So you're just taking all that into consideration, not to have that there. It's gonna suck for the team, but man, you still got a job to do. 19 games left. Go make the playoffs. Prove everybody wrong that your season isn't done because that's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are saying that this is it. The Devils' season is done. They're gonna miss the playoffs now, but. You got 4 points on Columbus. You got 6 points on the Rangers. You got 19 games left, 12 of them at home. Go make the playoffs. And then you make the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yeah, we spent a lot of this episode talking about the trade deadline and what the Devils might be bringing in order to bolster this team ahead of a playoff push. And I think they shouldn't maybe go and try to find who's going to play Jack Hughes' role for the rest of the season because, that's
That's
hard to
not going
come
to
by.
happen. Yeah, it's
Not
not
going
going
to
to
happen.
happen.
But I think now it's all the more pertinent that they get a scorer in the top six and that the guys who are in that locker room look at this and accept it as a challenge. That,
Yep.
not only has 2025 not gone well for us, but now we're missing perhaps our best defenseman, our two best defensemen, really, our best forward, and we're only just getting our goaltender back. Let's try to prove some folks wrong. I think there's been a little bit too much, especially early in the season, too much hype around this Devils team. I think this is the adversity the guys in that locker room, the guys that are healthy in that locker room at least need to be able to go through in order to re-galvanize the team and the fan base. So, this sucks. It doesn't get much worse than this. You hope that Jack, his recovery starts well, continues well, and ends well. But this being not the first injury of its kind to that guy, I think is it's very unfortunate, and you hope that there's no long-term effects associated with it as well. But like we were saying, it was never going to be about this year for the Devils. It seems like that is more and more true, given this news. And let's see what those guys who are left have in the tank to finish this year.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing before I give wishes to Jack, but hey man, Dawson Mercer now, you're gonna be second line center, bud. This is another opportunity for another young guy to make his mark again. Like obviously we've seen what Dawson's done on the wing past couple of years, be a point producer on a good line with Jack Hughes, but he was drafted to be a center. It hasn't worked so far, but there's your opportunity. You can be the guy in the middle now. Maybe they don't got to go trade for a third line center because Dawson Mercer becomes somebody the rest of the season. And then on to Jack Hughes, you just got to feel bad for him because like he just went through this last year. He had I believe it's the same shoulder, right? Is it the same shoulder? Right shoulder?
I thought it was, yeah.
So, I mean, he had right shoulder surgery last year. It looks like he, right shoulder again. So to have two surgeries back-to-back years, I mean, it's going to be a grind for him, and hopefully he doesn't get down on himself. I hope he just comes back even better, more hungry. That 2 seasons of his that he was having great years, by the way. We're just taken from just like that, and hopefully, the team comes back stronger. I hope he comes back with something to prove next year when he comes back for training camp. And it leads to something big. But rest up now, buddy. Hopefully the team could do something with you out, and just come back stronger, bud.
And that 100-point mark is going to continue to evade him, and I think that's the only thing keeping him from scoring 100 points is his own health. And that just really sucks for a guy who, in my opinion, is the greatest forward to ever put on a Devil sweater. So even now, he's still got to cement that legacy with the time he has left with the Devils, and he's got plenty of that time. So for now, and for real this time,
for real.
This has been Puck on the Parkway. For Daniel Rebane, I've been James Burley, saying so long and rest up, Jack Hughes, because we're going to need you down the line later, buddy. Have a good one, folks.
Peace.